really on, like, through scripture and through history, how God calls young people, where they're at and who they are.
Yes.
Um, I was hoping, like, if you could sort of reflect a bit more on that. But particularly, I think we know the stories, and we understand that God does call young people.
Yes.
But how can we offer that encouragement for young people, for them to know, and also maybe to think, does the church get in the way of that? No, I don't want you to be too political or whatever, but sometimes, because you were talking about going to churches where there's no children, no young people
Yes.
anymore. Well, that's the case already, in our province. There are churches throughout New Zealand, no young people, no children anymore. So, what has to change in our thinking? So maybe for young people and for the church.
Yeah, I truly believe deep down in my heart, because of my own experience, how when I thought that I didn't even believe in myself as a young man, and the expectation of what people expected of me, even from my parents, not much of that, but I felt that I really did not know. It began because I did not know how God really thought about what God said that who I really was. My life was always defined by what people said about me, or what I thought about myself. But when I came to understand that I was valued by God, regardless of my inabilities, regardless of where I came from, what happened in my early beginnings, I found that I was valued by God. And I found out about that when somebody took time to come and share that to me. And I believe in the church today, we gotta take time to listen to God of how we can, bring this message to people. Not only, especially from the younger ages, I was saying the next generation, from the Sunday school, that how God values them. And I have experienced to see some, even at the young age, starting to understand it. And as they grow up into this atmosphere, it really helps them in their journey. Because, as you see, we live in a world today, we have no control, what's happening. Temptation is everywhere. It's a reality. But when people, as I was sharing to them, people come to understand who they really are and what God really thinks of them, and how we as a church, not only as a church, but the message needs to go down to families, to parents, to value their children, for them to grow up in an atmosphere that they are here, that they are not accidents, they are not junks, they are not something just rejected. They are valuable. They have a part to play in every area of our lives, in families. What would we do without our children? And as they grow up in this atmosphere, and when they come to understand who they really are, then a relationship with God and with other people become more easier. I found children hard to relate because they don't, it's just because they're not loved, just because they don't know that there's a God that loves them. When I was in New Zealand studying, I could be part of my assignment was to just ask a few questions down there, or mission day. And I went to teach people just to ask a simple question. They didn't have to answer yes. Some I said, do you believe in a loving God? No. They are not because they had poor families. They were there because nobody cared. They weren't valued. Their parents were rich, but daddy and mommy were all everywhere, and they just said they didn't want. So they said they were felt much better with their friends in the streets. Because I believe it begins when they don't understand who they really are from God's point of view, and us, how we should really comes left. They are human beings. Human beings are the highest of God's gifts in His creation. God created every good gift comes from heaven, but out of all these good gifts, you and I, human beings, are highest. And every time we look at a person now, a young person, regardless of what lifestyle they are living, we need to have a vision, we need to have a passion and a desire to not look at what's happening at the moment, but what God can do in that person's life. And when we start introducing to that person, you don't have to do this, but the choice is yours because God is offering this. But the choice is yours. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Another question I have is just, I'm not sure how you go about answering this one, but I was just wondering, in terms of, like, you sort of showed a slice of life at the beginning of your presentation as well. What do you think? It's hard to define, but say young people, even in Fiji or in the Pacific. I know New Zealand's in the Pacific, but what do young people have to offer by way of example, by way of their kind of qualities to our church in terms of moving on, moving forward, growing, doing mission? What are those qualities that are there that you think you could name or talk about?
What young people?
Yeah, young people kind of give us an example as well as a church. It's a difficult question.
I believe young people can offer. The first thing with young people is that I see young people in a transition stage of a human life. When a young person is when things are changing in their lives. They're coming out of childhood, about to go into maturehood, and it's with young people, we need to encourage them. First thing that they have to offer is just to offer themselves to God, regardless of their inabilities, not to look at their abilities, but the availability to God. When they come to understand God, like Isaiah said, I'm a man of unclean lips, all these things, but all of you did was to offer. The first step young people need to do is just to offer themselves. I want to offer myself, just offer myself, not to look at the higher gifts, like to become a preacher or something, but just to offer themselves to be part of the functioning of our churches today. I want to offer myself to be a gardening boy. I want to offer myself to care, to be this. I want to offer myself to pray at a certain time. I want to offer myself to be music team. And at the same time, when they're doing that, we need to give space to allow the young people to discover their gifts, to make it easier for them. What are you good at in your gifts, in your talents? Carpenter, not only spiritual gifts, but the other gifts. And as they offer themselves, and as they come into the church, they'll find out more of how they can, other gifts that they will discover to use themselves. But I think the first step that young people, we need to encourage people, is just to offer themselves, just to come to church and sit down and listen.
How might we encourage that offering?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. The best thing I found out with young people is just to be with them and sit down with them, and don't do too much talking, just listen to them. We have different cultures. You have your different culture. Our sports field is like we have our rugby team. Sit down, play with them. Even I'm old, I try, play a few games with them, just to build that friendship, to get into to find a day. And you need to be patient to find a day where we start getting into a conversation about God and about the realities of life, what life is really about. And sitting down with them, like with me, like some churches they don't drink kava or they take alcohol, but drinks and things. But I found like some people is just to sit, like Jesus sat down. He sat down with the people. He ate with them. He drank with them, and it opened the door. He offered himself. Zacchaeus, he went to. He didn't wait for Zacchaeus to come. He went to him. When Zacchaeus thought that nobody really loved him, and he said, "Well, I think about Jesus. Maybe he don't know about me." The shock of his life, Jesus knew him, but Jesus went to him. I think we need to go to places where some people, we need to go out to them. Instead of waiting for them to come, we need to go out into their world, to sit down with them there. It's not an easy thing, it's quite difficult. There's something called as fresh expressions, where we don't wait for people to come into the church, we take the church into the places. And I think that's a new thing, because of the world is changing now. You see the culture of the world. Now everybody's working every day. Even Sundays before. Even it's happening right here in Fiji. Our supermarkets are open. I'm in the Western, and we don't blame people for. They have to work. They have to earn a living, and it's not about a special day. It's about knowing God. And you can know God in the church. You can know Him in a home, but the church needs to be there. We need the church, and the church is not about in the church building. It's about That's how I think. I don't know if people have but that's how I think about it. Instead of trying to wait for them to come, we need to be there, building friendships with them, sitting down with them in their but at the same time trying to live the example of Christ, not abusing. I mean, I'll sit down and have a glass, maybe a beer with them, but it's a limit. I don't go beyond that, and they will learn from that. That God did not create that. God created everything good. Our problem is that we've abused it. We've abused eating, we've abused drinking, we've abused sex, we've abused all God's good gifts. And we need to help them not to abuse the good gifts of God. That's how I think about it. And I found out that many of our young people are. My warden now was a drug dealer. He's come out of it. Because he saw the love of his mother and the love of the church. He's my warden now. It took time. Love is patient, love is kind. And it's not easy. I don't say that I am not. Sometimes I get impatient. I'm a human being. I get frustrated at times. I want to give up. But then again, we're reminded what life is all about. What's the purpose of life? That's how I feel. Then you get going again. Kickstart again.
Thank you very much.